You know how they always talk about, like, when you're in your car, it's like this odd, like, psychological domain. And,
Well, no,
like,
what?
yeah, like, people just think they act differently in their car. Like, they might pick their nose in their car. They might, like, it's almost like, I'm losing her. Hi, I'm Jen.
And I'm Suzanne.
Today we are talking about blind spots and places where you may not realize that you are not acting like yourself.
Okay.
So my story starts with being in traffic.
Nope.
I
Uh-huh.
was with my daughter. We were on our way to one of her games, and she casually says to me, "Mom, you don't act like you normally do when you're driving."
Ouch. Okay.
And I was like, "What do you mean I don't act like I normally do?" Like, I was so oblivious that what she was even getting at. And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And then she starts to say, "Well, in real life, you're always saying, like, you don't know what's going on with the other person. You never know what's going on in their day. Their responses and behaviors usually have nothing to do with you. It has to do with whatever's going on with them." And she said, "But then when we're in the car, it just feels like you act like everybody's attacking you." I was like,
And I'm going to support your daughter in this particular one because I talk to you often in the car, in the carpool lines, and it is a constant running diatribe at times might be the right word.
diatribe's a great word. Mm-hmm.
I've also personally been in the car with you and been like, oh, okay. But I did not notice, I think, the difference, like your daughter pointed out, which was, it's so true. Like, you've come so much in dealing with and saying like, hey, that's about the other people and that's their thing. Yeah. So I find that to be interesting.
Almost every interaction in my life, I try to look at it that way. And then I also preach it to my daughter and to my son and to my husband and to basically anyone who will listen.
To your sister.
To your sister. Yeah. To you listener, like, I will be saying this. So when she said that, I was like, And so I wasn't defensive. I actually was like, just quiet. And I was like, oh gosh, wow, you are absolutely right. Wow, this is a place where I am convinced that I am the victim.
Ooh, uh-huh.
And so that was just sort of like, okay. So then I started thinking about it. And I have always convinced myself that I am not like the others. Like, if you've watched the youth sports episode, I am not like those other parents that scream at their children. So I am so much better. I am not like those other drivers that scream and curse and flip everyone off and use their horn.
Like the New York style.
Yeah, I don't do that. So I'm not like that. But I think you used the word diatribe. I have a running diatribe where I just talk everything out, which would be fine, except for the fact that I'm talking everything out as a victim. They're trying to kill me. They're trying to cut the line. They're cheaters. They're jerks. They're a-holes.
All the things.
All the things. And you know what? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, right? Like, that's the whole point. This has nothing to do with me. And what I have control of is leaving on time, which I do, making sure there's built-in time with, whatever's going on in Texas that week. But at the end of the day, as long as I get there safe, especially with my kid in the car, I have won. I have already won. So what in the world am I freaking out about? And it was just such a huge blind spot to me.
Yeah. Where do you think it comes from? Like, do you think it's always been that, like, running commentary in your head?
I have thought about it.
Yeah.
I really thought about it. And I honestly don't know where it comes from, except for, you know how they always talk about, like, when you're in your car, it's like this odd, like, psychological domain. And
Well, no,
like,
what?
Yeah, like, people just think they act differently in their car. Like, they might pick their nose in their car. They might, like, it's almost like, I'm losing her. I'm losing her. Do you know what, like, it's like if someone were to attack your house, it's like your domain. Like, you're like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I feel like in my car, that's the only thing I can think of is that you just have this like weird protective, like, don't hit my car, don't hit my kids, don't hit me, don't try to, you know what I mean? It's like this weird protective thing.
So that's interesting because I can tell you at no point have I had a weird protective thing or considered my car my domain.
Well, then help me. Why am I like this in my car? Ask me the questions.
You know, when you were saying that, I did find it interesting. I don't know if you recall this, but Dad used to have a running commentary at all times when we were in the car. Do you remember this?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm wondering.
So do you think it's like a learned, and then I just kept it because I didn't realize, because in my mind, I wasn't saying F you and I wasn't flipping people off and I wasn't. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, that doesn't need to be investigated any further. You're good. You're good.
Well, I think twofold. One, I do think it's learned. And I think just like anything, if we're not thinking about it or looking at it, you may not recall that Dad did that. Because I didn't recall that, because I have a weird thing where I turn the blinker off in my car. And my son said to me one time, why do you always turn off the blinker? Like, once I get into the left-hand lane, I'll turn off the blinker, because Dad left his blinker on and it drove me insane. So it's like those learned things that I never thought about until he asked me about it. And so I'm wondering for you is if you never really thought, and we spent a lot of time in the car with Dad, that
absolutely
that maybe it was learned from there.
I could definitely give you that. I definitely think it was learned for sure.
And I think what's interesting, and I wonder, we both spent time in New York City. And I wonder if there it's very, I mean, I even think I made a point of it in the earlier part of the episode is like, it's not New York City, because there it's like everyone's honking, they're cursing.
I didn't even have a car when I lived in New York City.
But I'm wondering if that's what you thought, like that was a crazy, obnoxious environment.
Yeah, you're right.
If you weren't doing those things, then your running commentary was just, you know,
and I was like cursing in front of my kids and all that stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, but she's like, Mom, you just got to let it go. And I was like,
ooh, out of the mouth of babes.
Like I said, I just love when things are used against me.
Yeah. So what? So once you had that like discovery, it was quite the discovery. And it sounds like you're still working through it right now, right?
I'm kind of just working through like why I did it, because I will say that was like a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now it pops up and I totally notice it and I start laughing and I'm like, it doesn't matter. And so what I say to it, like, she was right. Like, this doesn't really matter. Like, in the scheme of life, I'm not late. I'm safe.
You know, it's so funny.
Honestly, what's wrong?
This week, I've talked to you twice, because shocker, we were talking on the phone. And 2 times you said, without me knowing that this had actually happened, yeah, you know what? There's so much traffic. I might be running late. And you're just like, but it is what it is. And I remember thinking to myself, that's not normally Jenn. Like, I really just unconsciously had that thought. And so
real-time growth.
Exactly. Like, definitely I could see the discovery. Now I understand where it came from. The shift of, is this how I really want to talk in the car and feel all the time? Because I imagine, too, like, that would add to your frustration of the day when you would show up to things, and then empower you to make a different choice and to sit back or laugh when that happened and be like, Because I know for me, I have to stop sometimes similarly and be like, like, again, I don't have that level of conscious streaming you seem to have, but I do have the, like, Suzanne, they cut you off. Who cares? Like, ultimately, at the end of the day,
does it
really matter? And it just relaxes me. And it sounds like that's something similar that happened to you, where you could just laugh and be like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think my takeaways were, one, where else do I have these blind spots that I feel personally attacked. Because that's really what it is. In traffic, you feel personally, not you, I feel personally attacked, right?
Yeah.
And I think that shows up a lot in other people's lives and just, all sorts of random places.
Sure.
And then the second is just blind spots. And you have to have people and connection with people that you love enough to tell you the truth. But that also requires, like, she felt so safe to tell me that. She was like, she gave me a preface, like a, hey, you're not going to want to hear this kind of preface.
Yeah.
But I didn't freak out. I wasn't like, that's not true. I just sat there and listened to her and I was like, she's not wrong.
But I also think that speaks to the bond you guys have and what you've developed with her.
Right.
As well.
Right. But I think that those are two things that I think that just being open to your blind spots, knowing you have them,
sure.
You might not be able to find them, but just be open enough for somebody else to tell you about them and know that they're telling you that from love, not from a place of like, you are really annoying on the road, right? She could have said that, but she was like,
sure.
You're not the same in the car. And that was a really great way to say, so let's talk about how you are in the car versus how you are in real life. So I feel like it was also just a great segue by her.
Yeah.
In a loving way to bring it to my attention. And so I can't wait to ask her and tell her that you noticed a difference.
Hashtag growth.
I'm doing so good.
And so, listener friend, I think the question today is, what blind spot do you have where you act totally different in one place versus another? And has anyone pointed it out to you recently? Because I think with blind spots, oftentimes we need someone else to point it out. That's why it's a blind spot. And so has someone said something to you? Think about that. Well, that's it for today.
I hope you learned something in my story.
See you next time. Same place, same sisterhood.
Bye.